Hello and welcome to the Band Life podcast. Here we are, episode 12 or part 2 of our All Things Spotify series. Now, in this part, we're going to talk about the royalty systems, mainly the user-centric system and the Pro-Rata system. So if you want to know all about those two systems, stick with this episode. So without further ado, here is episode 12. Band Life Podcast! You are listening to the Band Life Podcast, your number one guide on how to run a profitable band. Here are your hosts, Pete Stannard and Adam West, the Wizard of Rock! That leads us nicely onto the next section of how the royalty systems work. Do you understand the royalty system, Mr. West?
No.
Actually, a lot of people don't. They just go, I know I don't like it. Or I know I'm not being paid anything. Something like that, yeah.
I don't know how it works, but I know it's very little that you do get paid. So.
Yeah, well, I'm going to explain it to you. And I've got a nice little analogy that hopefully will educate you on how the royalty system works. All music streaming sites, apart from SoundCloud, use the Pro-Rata royalty system. SoundCloud uses a user-centric system, or as they call it, fan-powered royalties, which is quite catchy stuff.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you're a generous soul, which I'm sure you are, why not buy Adam and myself a cup of coffee? You could do that at buymeacoffee.com/the Band Life Podcast.
So how the Pro-Rata system works is basically all the money gets put into one pot. Each artist receives a percentage of that pot equal to the percentage of songs streamed for that period. Okay. Now, if someone just said that to me, honestly, if someone said that to me, I'll just be like, blah, 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 but I have no idea what you're talking about because that's just, there's no substance to that. So, okay. So I've put it into ways that I would understand it. There's Adam and Pete, right? You and me. No, not you and me. Adam and Pete, right? We're paying Spotify £10 each for unlimited music. Okay. So the total pot is £20. Okay. Now, Adam loves Ed Sheeran. Silly Adam. Obviously. And Pete loves the Shallow Souls. Obviously. Why wouldn't he? Adam listens to Ed Sheeran 18 times in 1 month. But Pete is really busy because he has 3 kids, a business and a podcast to run. So he only gets to listen to the Shallow Souls twice in that month. Ed Sheeran will receive 90% of the overall streams, okay? Because of the 20, you've played him 18 times, that's 90%, okay? That leaves 10% for the Shallow Souls because I only listened to you twice. £18 goes to Ed, £2 goes to the Shallow Souls. Even though Pete hasn't listened to Ed Sheeran in that month, 90% of my subscription has gone to Ed. Yeah, because you've only got the £20 to start with. That's why people see this system as being unfair, because I didn't listen to Ed at all, but he's receiving 90% of my subscription. I would much rather give my £10 to the Shallow Souls.
Yeah, but Ed's got to get his money somehow, hasn't he?
But yeah, whether or not that's a fair way of doing it, it's different. It's not up to Ed. Ed can go himself, okay? Now, so that's generally how it works. And that's just very obviously it's a way more complicated than that because there's way more money and there's a lot more artists involved. There's a lot more people involved. But that is the essential thing of it, is that because it's like a proportion, because Ed has way more listeners, he gets a bigger slice of the pie, regardless of what people want to pay for, which is a bizarre system. if you go back in the day when you bought an album from a shop, a physical album, a royalty would go to the artist. That royalty wouldn't be shared around all the artists that were in existence.
Right.
It didn't work like that. It was like, okay, well, this person's bought this album, so this percentage goes to that artist. In this system, if we were to put that system into the physical realm, that royalty would go around everybody else. And whoever has sold more albums that week or month or whatever would get a bigger slice of that pie. That's just not a fair way of doing it, I don't think. That's why a lot of people are calling for the user-centric system that SoundCloud do. The way that the royalty system works with that. Did you understand that analogy? Do you think people will understand that analogy?
With me and you, yes. I think that's fine.
Yeah, good. People will say like, oh, you got to have like 300 streams to get $1, and all this other stuff. And it's like, it doesn't actually work like that. This is the thing, because obviously it fluctuates depending on how much money is coming into the pot. Because if there's less money in the pot, then less money is going to go out because everything's done in a percentage.
Let's be honest with a couple of things, okay? As musicians ourselves, okay? I think I can speak for the majority of people generally out there and how they feel, and what the mindset is for the biggest part of it.
Yeah.
And that is, most of us really don't care how the system operates behind the scenes and all the finer details with all the workings out. Most musicians don't care. There's a small percentage that do, yes, that have interest in the business side model of it and how they're going to actually make some money through it. And with that business mindset, great, I commend them. Okay, I haven't met many that actually get into it that much. But based on what we've been talking about over the last few months, is that it's essential and important in order to make the band grow. But there's a large proportion of artists and musicians that just like, look, I just want people to hear our music. And if this platform is providing an outlet for that, great, then I'll chuck it on there. Unfortunately, what we don't do is a bit of homework and study what actually goes on behind the scenes. Yeah. How beneficial is it? The pros or cons? Because it's an absolute minefield. This is where obviously we come in to help people navigate through all that, which I think is a good thing. But most of us just don't care. It's just like we want to go out there and play the music, play on stage, have a good time, and let somebody else worry and deal with it. Unfortunately, that can't always be the case.
Yeah.
And this is why you get a lot of artists, probably a large proportion of them going, oh, well, Spotify it's not fair. And it's like, well, its business model is set up this way to run this way, which means if you didn't bother looking at it beforehand, then you're going to be succumb to the problematic issues that most of us are complaining about online.
Yeah, you say that people don't care about the royalties side of things. And I think a lot of it, they don't quite understand it.
Well, there is a lot of that because we're just simple people. We write music. I mean, most people spend a lot of time playing guitar and remembering where the notes are and writing music.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like you said in one of the podcasts we did about delegating members of the band to certain jobs, which is a great idea. Most of us don't do it.
If you're looking at this from a business perspective, you got to kind of think along the lines of, well, if we're not going to be making any money, then why would we spend our time as an investment driving people to Spotify and not to Apple Music or to SoundCloud or to YouTube instead? If I'm getting a better response rate, if I'm getting more engagement from my audience and I'm getting a bigger royalty rate, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I exclude Spotify and have something like SoundCloud that has a different royalty system that seems to benefit the artist more?
Well, it's education's the key, which is where we come in. Because I didn't know about centric
user-centric system? Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. So it's something I might go, okay, fine. Look, I mean, we could all sit here and go, we're all for the fans. We've said it before. We're all for supporting local artists. When a large proportion of us are not, it's like, well, it's what about me? What about me? What about me? And it's a very selfish environment sometimes. You know, we do our best to try and be supportive, but we're all busy living our lives and making excuses and all that good stuff. But I think if we did concentrate our efforts and energy a bit more and going, look, SoundCloud and Bandcamp, not as massive as Spotify, but what's more important to you? Good fan base?
Exactly.
Or not?
And I love Bandcamp. You know, you can buy all the physical stuff, you can buy merch, it's all in one place. It's, you know, it's all it's a nice experience.
It's not all about that for most people, though. See, for me, generally, I like that. The fact that I can get all of the band's merch. I'd rather get it physically when the cash is available. But that's, it's good for that. And there's Spotify doesn't do that, although you can link your shop through it. There's a community on Bandcamp. They don't have it with Spotify, and I'm wondering whether or not they'll start to adopt that. And I think with Spotify, see, for me, it's like I want to listen to the bands I gig with and buy their stuff, Bandcamp. I want to listen to music that is in the mainstream and not local. I go to Spotify because it's all on there. And I think you've got two categories, haven't you? They're separate because you don't have what Spotify got on Bandcamp. And you kind of do say I'm with SoundCloud, but you've got to pay for the pro version to get it, which effectively is other people posting it up there generally. And not everything's up there, but I did consider like going, okay, well, why don't I ditch the subscription to Spotify, put it back into SoundCloud, and keep Bandcamp, and just with the pro versions combined, might be a little bit less than Spotify. I can actually get all the music and listen to it through all there.
Yeah, possibly. And obviously some of the larger acts you might not get on SoundCloud because of the way the majors work. But we will get on to that. I think we're coming down on the side of that user-centric as a system is a better system for the artist. Then you kind of think, well, why don't the majors want to use a user-centric system anyway? Why are they so hinged on the pro-rata system? And it's kind of a yes-no kind of answer to that. Some would say that it will make no difference because the major companies, they have such an extensive artist catalogue over all genres of music that it would just kind of level its stuff out. So the smaller artists will get slightly more and the bigger artists will get slightly less. So it would just kind of level itself out in some way.
That's not a bad thing, Pete.
No, it's not. I'm not saying it is. SoundCloud, who have obviously put in the user-centric model, analyzed 118,000 artist accounts for a year, testing the user-centric model. They noted that the majority of the artists earned more overall. Notably, nearly 65% of artists with fewer than 100,000 listeners earned far more revenue than they would have under the pro-rata model.
Interesting.
38% of artists with over 100,000 listeners were better off. Since most major labels, they're going to have more than 100,000 listeners.
Why don't they give people a choice when they sign up for these platforms? Like, so would you like the centric system, or would you like the pro-rata system? The centric system works this way, pro-rata system works this way. You choose, and then that way people can go, okay, I'll choose what's best for me then.
Yeah, I'm not sure how difficult that would be to kind of sift through at their end. When you think there's like over 100,000 songs uploaded to the DSPs every day.
Yeah, but you've got most of the AI and algorithms running the show now, anyway, haven't you?
Yeah, well, this we will actually get into. So those stats and stuff I got from a blog and on Ari's take. He's actually pretty on it with that. So I will leave a link in the show notes if you want to sort of go over those bits. I'm not sure about the actual sort of logistical part of having an option as such, but yeah, I'm not experienced enough in, in software engineering to know whether or not that would work as a thing. But the other thing is that the user-centric system would shift money on a genre level, apparently. So genres like rap and hip hop would see a decrease in royalty share, whereas genres like classical, blues, and metal would see an increase. So metal bands are actually getting a little bit screwed by not being on the user-centric. The other side of this that you touched on before was the user-centric model also brings down the level of fraud, because the pro-rata system helps sort of the bad actors, as it were, because they use bots and hacked accounts and playlists to boost streaming numbers.
Yeah,
and obviously, because they've got a bigger share of the streams, they get more money. If it was a user-centric system, the money would go directly to the artist. Like you say, AI generated music is going to become a massive problem within the royalty system.
I think they're already battling it, mate.
I think they are. I think there's going to be a big problem with that. But I think that this is probably the best way of doing that. The other thing to be aware of is that Warner has actually signed their license for SoundCloud to use their catalog. So that's the first major company to allow the user-centric to actually work. So I think at some point it's probably going to come in. It's going to be a system that they're going to just use. But I think it has to kind of get to a point where the major companies are like, okay, well, now we're not actually earning as much as we should be before they adopt it.
Yeah,
once it really starts to affect their big top artists, because there's so much AI stuff going on, and that money's spread really thinly across the industry. That's when they'll kind of go, okay, let's do the user-centric, and we'll take a little bit of a hit for our bigger acts, but we will make the money back on our smaller acts. And then hopefully, I suppose they might be a little less risk adverse and things like that as well. The user-centric model will help to kind of take that element of risk out, because those smaller acts will be generating more royalty, which makes them less of a risk overall.
Understanding the centric system and the pro-rata system should at least benefit any musicians listening to this anyway, because it's,
and if I hope it kind of educates people to kind of go, okay, and so they can have an informed decision about where they want their fan base to listen to their music. Whether you drive people to Spotify or whether you drive people to Bandcamp or wherever, I just don't want people to just assume that, we have to be on Spotify, otherwise we're not going to get anywhere. It's like, do you? Or will you get lost in the hundreds of thousands of songs that are put out there every day?
I direct people to our Linktree, right? And from there, because Linktree for me is a nice, easy platform, right? It's simple. You scroll up. What is this band on, and what do I want to know about them? Like, all the socials are on there. I don't think I've put an email on there as of yet, but like, you got the website, everything's on there. So then that way people can go, I don't have SoundCloud or Bandcamp, but I'll listen to on Spotify because they're there, right?
Yeah.
Or if we don't put that on there, they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll listen to on YouTube. So make sure your YouTube account's up to date, or Bandcamp. But
if you only had one platform that you wanted people to listen to, so obviously you'd have all your links, but the one where you would listen to your music was, either Spotify or Apple or wherever, that would kind of just force people to listen to you there. I don't think many people are going to go, I'm not going to listen to you on SoundCloud because I'm so loyal to any other platform. I don't see that as a case. I've never spoken to anyone that's gone, I love Spotify so much, I will only ever listen to an artist on Spotify. I think if they really want to listen to your music, they'll listen to it wherever you want them to listen to it to. And I think there's this kind of mindset of, I have to have everything there because someone might have a Spotify account, someone might have this account, someone might have that account. So, but you don't necessarily even have to have an account to just listen to the music. A lot of the time you just click it and it will come up and you just play.
Yeah.
So, and then once they've listened to it, then maybe they'll go, okay, well, I'll sign up and get an account, and do it that way. And again, it all comes down, like we said before, it all comes down to choice. The way in which that Spotify is working, it's not good for the industry in general as well. And I think in episode 8, we talked about Black Sabbath and how they were signed to Philips. Their first record signing was to Philips. And the reason that Philips was signing artists was so that they could make records, because Philips made record players. You can't, you're not going to sell many record players if nobody's making records. So the reason that they invested in bands was to make records so that they can sell more record players. Spotify doesn't have to do that. So the money coming in at the top, that 50 billion coming in at the top.
Stop it. It kills me when you say it. 50 billion. That's insane.
But the thing that really gripes me is that money's not really getting invested back into the music industry. People like Daniel Ek are going to invest it into the tech industry. It's going into like Silicon Valley-esque companies.
Yeah.
And for me, that isn't how it should work. People paying for music, which they're not, but if they're paying for music consumption, at least back in the day, that money was coming back into the industry and it was being filtered down. The small amount that's being filtered down from Spotify, it's not going to be invested back into the music industry like what Philips was doing. It's going to be invested in tech. It's going to be invested in digital stuff, which isn't how this is why the capitalism idea is kind of stalled in the music industry. The music, everything's stopping at the top, and what little is coming down is going elsewhere. It's not going back into the music industry itself.
It's an interesting point, but this is the thing, see, with the introduction to the digital era and AI, people now have got quite complacent and a bit lazy, I think, with even us. We're just like, who goes out and buys a record player and a vinyl now? It's like, dude, that's ancient tech. Even though the sales for vinyl has actually topped CDs, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But investing that into something that people buy to listen to it, I mean, it's great. But now people are going, let's invest in digital because that's where it is. Like we're like at the precipice now of decision making for musicians, content creators and sound engineers, where we're like, how do we stay current without getting left behind, but without leaving those sort of grassroots ideas and things that we like, and try. And I what I've seen at the moment is a lot of people are they're a little bit torn between, like, I listen to people, talk to people my age, and you've got that whole sort of like, I'd love the day where you just walk into a pub and go, hey, you got any gigs, slots available for next 2 weeks? Yeah, fancy gig, job done.
Yeah.
Doesn't work our way anymore.
No.
You know, there's that sort of thing. I think we're really at that sort of point where now where people are undecided where to go because they like it, they don't like it, and they're like, they don't want to leave the old world, do they? They're behind. No. Me included. I don't mind sharing. I don't mind being part of the new world and what's involved because I love tech. But I'm like, I'm torn. Anybody else torn? Leave comments. I'm a bit torn.
Yeah, please do. If any of our listeners wants to leave a comment about this and whether they prefer, the physical to the digital world. But I also think it, like I said previously, about it's devaluing music because people they don't go out and buy, they don't physically go to a record shop. So there's an investment of time, but there's also an investment of money there to buy a physical thing. So, I mean, when I was a teenager, I went to work. I started work at 16 to buy music. That was my one drive thing to go to work.
Yeah.
Because my parents were like, I'm not going to buy you music for you. If you're going to listen to this crap, I'm not going to buy it for you. So if you want it, go
All
and
that
get
mental teenage
get a
torture.
job. Exactly. All that stuff. So I went and I got a job because I wanted to buy. Well, I didn't have an option. I wanted to buy CDs and all the rest of it. But it was a vested thing. You know,
We've lost that, haven't we? Yeah.
We've lost that with the digital stuff. And you know, even if everything was a subscription, at least, and you were paying for the music, at least there's kind of that connection there between, okay, I'm working towards paying for that enjoyment of music. You know, in the same way that free gigs, for example, like I think what we were saying in the last episode with Ed Sheeran with his corporate tickets, that he'd be playing those first couple of rows would be half empty because they were corporate tickets, because they were given away. People just didn't show up, so he swapped them out.
It's clever, man. It's
where
very
he couldn't
clever.
see it. I think it kind of, you know, if you're given something for free, generally you don't give a crap about it as much as if you've worked. You know, if you worked hard all week and you're paying for something at the back end of that, then you're going to enjoy that thing even more because you have a sense of earned ownership as opposed to something that's just given to you from a psychological standpoint, I think. So I think there's a lot to be said for actually, as a listener, paying for music. As much as people go, "Oh, why would I pay for something that I can get for free?" So, well, because you'll enjoy it more. The experience is more because you've earned it. Bad Life Podcast!